The Draconian fleet disappeared, and humanity was to blame the cow. Stars looked the same as they always did through the viewport of the horizon's edge. Commander Hyunwoo had seen them 1,000 times before during his patrols along the outer rim. But today something was different. The communication console beeped with an urgent pattern that made his heart race. "Commander, we're picking up a distress signal," said Ji-won from her station. The young science officer's face was pale as she studied her screens. "It's coming from the Void Reach Nebula." Hyunwoo moved to stand behind her chair. "Can you identify the source?" Ji-won's fingers danced across her controls. The signal was weak and broken, cutting in and out like a dying heartbeat. But when she finally isolated it, her hands stopped moving. "Sir, it's Draconian. The signature matches their 5th fleet. The 5th fleet, everyone in the galaxy knew about the 5th fleet. 3,000 warships, 2 million soldiers, the pride of the Draconian Empire. They were the most powerful military force in known space, and they had been on a routine patrol through the nebula. Set course for those coordinates," Hyunwoo ordered. "Maximum speed." The Horizon's Edge was a small research vessel, not built for combat or rescue operations, but they were the closest human ship to the signal. As they approached the nebula, Hyunwoo felt a growing sense of unease. The Draconians had always looked down on humans. In the 200 years since humanity joined the Galactic Council, the Reptilian Empire had made it clear they thought humans were primitive and weak. When they arrived at the coordinates, Ji-won ran every scan she could think of. Then she ran them again. Her confusion turned to fear. "Commander, there's nothing here." "What do you mean, nothing?" "No ships, no debris. No energy signatures, nothing." Ji-won pulled up a holographic display. "But look at this. The gravitational readings are wrong. There are anomalies everywhere. And these particles," she zoomed in on a cluster of data. "I've never seen anything like them. They don't match any known weapon discharge or engine signature." Hyunwoo stared at the empty space where 3,000 warships should have been. "Send everything we have to Earth Command. Tag it Priority Alpha." Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. The Draconian 5th Fleet had vanished without a trace. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. In the Grand Chamber on the neutral world of Concordia, representatives from 100 species gathered to hear what the Draconians had to say. Admiral Velgorth stood before the council. He was massive, even for a Draconian, with scales that gleamed like polished obsidian. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled delegates with barely contained rage. "The 5th Fleet is gone. Our best ships, our finest warriors, and we know who is responsible." The chamber fell silent. Velgorth's gaze fixed on the human section. "Humanity has developed a weapon capable of destroying an entire fleet without leaving evidence. They have committed an act of war." Ambassador Tae Yang jumped to his feet. He was a small man compared to most of the aliens around him, but his voice carried clearly. "That is absurd. Humanity has no such weapon. We would never attack the Draconian fleet. We had nothing to gain from such an action." "Then explain where our ships have gone," Velgorth demanded. "Your research vessel was the first to arrive. Very convenient. We responded to a distress call. That's what any decent species would do." The council's speaker, an ancient being made of crystalline structures, raised its appendages for silence. "The council must investigate this matter. Humanity, you have 30 standard days to provide answers. If you cannot explain the disappearance of the 5th Fleet, economic sanctions will be imposed. If evidence of human involvement is found, military action will be considered." Tae Yang wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. The council had spoken. He sent an urgent message back to Earth, knowing that humanity's future in the galaxy hung by a thread. On Earth, Prime Minister Su-min received the news in her office overlooking the sprawling city of New Seoul. She was a woman who had built her career on careful diplomacy and measured responses. But as she read the council's ultimatum, she knew diplomacy might not be enough this time. She called an emergency meeting of her Security Council. Military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officers filled the room. "Tell me we don't have a secret weapon," she said bluntly. General Haewon shook his head. "Nothing that could do this. We have advanced missiles, particle beams, nuclear weapons, but to make an entire fleet disappear? That's beyond our capabilities." "Then what happened to them?" Su-min asked. Nobody had an answer. Dr. Da-Yoon, the government's chief science advisor, studied the data from the Horizon's Edge. These particle readings are fascinating. They suggest some kind of dimensional disturbance. But that's theoretical physics. We don't have technology that can manipulate dimensions. Sumin made her decision. We need someone to find out what really happened. Not a diplomat or a scientist. We need someone who can think outside the normal parameters. She turned to her military liaison. Get me Captain Jae-hyun. Jae-hyun was on leave, visiting his family's farm in the countryside when the call came. He had fought in the border wars 10 years ago, earning medals and a reputation as a tactician who could win impossible battles. But he had grown tired of fighting and had requested a quiet assignment mapping star systems. Captain Jae-hyun reporting. Prime Minister, he said over the video link, still wearing his civilian clothes. Sumin got straight to the point. I need you to lead an investigation. Find out what happened to the Draconian fleet. You'll have access to our best people and equipment. 30 days to save humanity from war. Can you do it? Jae-hyun looked at the data she transmitted to him. A missing fleet. Strange particles. Gravitational anomalies. It seemed impossible. But that was exactly the kind of challenge he had always accepted. I'll need to pick my own team. Done. When can you leave? Tomorrow morning, Sumin nodded. The fate of our species is in your hands, Captain. Don't let us down. As the call ended, Jae-hyun stood on his family's porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3,000 ships had vanished, and somehow humanity was being blamed. He had 30 days to find the truth. The clock was already ticking. The Draconian fleet disappeared, and humanity was to blame. Captain Jae-hyun stood in the briefing room of the Dauntless, a military research vessel that had been assigned to his command. Around the table sat 4 people, each one the best in their field. He had handpicked them from across Earth's military and scientific communities. Dayun was a quantum physicist who had published papers that most people couldn't even understand. She was young, barely 30, but her mind worked in ways that others couldn't match. Kyung-soo was older, a xenoarchaeologist who had spent decades studying dead civilizations across the galaxy. Hae-won was a decorated combat pilot and military strategist with sharp instincts. Minji was an AI specialist capable of making computers do things that seemed like magic. We have 28 days left, Jae-hyun began. The Galactic Council wants answers. The Draconians want blood. We need to give them the truth. He pulled up a star chart showing the Void Reach Nebula. The 5th Fleet was following this route when they disappeared. We're going to follow the same path. The Dauntless entered the nebula 3 days later. The massive cloud of gas and dust stretched for light years in every direction, glowing with the light of newly formed stars. It was beautiful and dangerous, a place where sensors didn't work properly and navigation was difficult. The Draconians chose this route because it was the fastest way through, Kyung-soo explained as he studied old star charts. But look at this. He pointed to markings on maps from 12 different extinct civilizations. They all marked this region as forbidden. Every single one of them. Why would ancient species mark this area as forbidden? Hae-won asked. That's what we need to find out, Jae-hyun said. They spent days scanning every cubic kilometer of space along the fleet's projected route. Minji's computers processed millions of data points looking for anything unusual. Then deep within an asteroid field, they found something. Captain, there's a structure on that asteroid, Minji reported. It's artificial. And the signature is human. The space station was small and looked abandoned. When they docked and entered, they found it covered in dust. The air was stale but breathable. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors. This place has been empty for years, Hae-won said, her hand resting on her sidearm. They found the central computer core still running on backup power. Minji connected her systems and started downloading files. What they discovered made everyone go silent. The station was part of a Black Ops project called Event Horizon. It wasn't in any official records. The government didn't know it existed. Who was running this? Jae-hyun demanded. Minji pulled up personnel files. Dr. Woo Jin. He was a dimensional physicist who disappeared 20 years ago. Everyone thought he died in an accident. They gathered in the station's old briefing room and read through Woo Jin's logs. The scientist had been obsessed with finding new energy sources. He had discovered something he called a dimensional rift, a tear in the fabric of space itself. He believed it could provide unlimited power. Dayun read the technical data with growing horror. He didn't understand what he was dealing with. Look at these readings. He was poking holes in reality itself. What happened to him? Kyung-soo asked. The last log entry is dated 19 years ago, Minji said. He writes about the rift becoming unstable. Then nothing. The station went dark. Dayun spent hours analyzing the data. She barely slept, drinking coffee and running calculations. Finally, she called everyone together. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly. I know what happened to the Draconian fleet. She pulled up a holographic model of the nebula. Woojin's experiments created a dimensional rift here. A red spot appeared on the map. He couldn't control it. The rift damaged the fabric of space itself, creating a weak point. For years, nothing happened. But then the Draconian fleet came through. Their warp drives, Haehyun said, understanding immediately. Exactly. 3,000 ships all running powerful faster than light engines. The energy output triggered the weak point. The rift opened fully and pulled them in. Dayun manipulated the hologram. They're not destroyed. They're in another dimension. A pocket universe where the normal rules of physics don't apply. The implications were staggering. Jae-hyun felt sick. So humanity is responsible. A human scientist created this disaster. It was an accident, Kyung-soo said. A rogue operation. The government didn't know. That won't matter to the Draconians, Haewon pointed out. Or the council. Human hands created the rift. That's all they'll care about. Jae-hyun stood and paced the room. They had the truth now. They could take this evidence back to Earth. The government could present it to the council. They could prove it was an accident by a single rogue scientist. Maybe the council would show mercy. Maybe sanctions instead of war. But the Draconian fleet would still be lost. 2 million lives trapped in another dimension. Families would never see their loved ones again. The Draconians would never forgive humanity, accident or not. There's another option, Jae-hyun said quietly. We go get them. Everyone stared at him. That's insane, Haewon said. We don't even know if the rift is still open. Or if we could survive crossing over. Or if we could get back. That is it possible? Jae-hyun asked. The physicist bit her lip. Maybe. Woojin left detailed notes about the rift's structure. The weak point is still there. We might be able to force it open again. But the trip would be incredibly dangerous. We'd be traveling into unknown physics. Our ship might not survive. And if we do make it through, can we bring the fleet back? I don't know. I'd need to study the conditions inside the pocket dimension first. Jae-hyun looked at each of his team members. If we go back now and tell Earth what we found, we save ourselves. We prove it was an accident. But the fleet stays lost and humanity becomes the species that killed 2 million Draconians, even if we didn't mean to. If we try to rescue them and fail, we die, Haewon said, and Earth never gets the evidence. We send the data back first, Minji suggested. I can set up an automated transmission. If we don't return in a certain time frame, everything we've found gets sent to Earth Command. Kyung-soo nodded slowly. It's what the right thing to do. Those ancient civilizations marked this area as forbidden for a reason. Maybe they knew about the rifts. Maybe they knew the dangers, but they also knew that some things are worth the risk. I'm not ordering any of you to come, Jae-hyun said. This is volunteer only. I'll go alone if I have to. Dawn stood up. You'll need me to navigate the rift. Minji was next. And me to keep the ship's systems running in non-standard physics. Haewon checked her weapon. Someone has to keep you all alive. Kyung-soo smiled. I've spent my whole life studying dead civilizations. I'd like to see something truly alien before I die. Jae-hyun felt pride swell in his chest. This was why he had chosen them. All right then. Minji set up the dead man's switch. Dayun, start preparing the ship for dimensional travel. Everyone else, get ready. We're going to do something no human has ever done before. He looked at the star chart one more time. We're going to save our enemies. The Draconian fleet disappeared. And humanity was to blame. Admiral Velgorth stared at Jae-hyun through the view screen for a long moment. Pride and survival warred in his yellow eyes. Finally, survival won. What do you propose? First, we need to break your fleet out of the temporal loop. Then we figure out how to get everyone out of here before this dimension collapses. Jae-hyun gestured to Daun. My physicist will work with your science team. Within an hour, Daun was aboard the Draconian flagship, surrounded by reptilian scientists who looked at her with suspicion and curiosity. The Draconian science officer, a female named Sekthar, examined Daun's calculations with grudging respect. Your mathematics are sound, human. But breaking the loop will require precise coordination across all 3,000 ships. Can your fleet do that? Of course. We are Draconians. There was pride in Sekthar's voice, but also fear. But even if we break free of the loop, how do we escape this place? That's what we need to figure out. Tell me everything your sensors have detected. While the scientists worked, Kyung-soo explored the ancient structures floating in the pocket dimension. He convinced Velgorth to let him take a shuttle to one of the massive constructs. Haewon went with him as protection. The structure was the size of a moon, made from materials that didn't exist in normal space. Symbols covered every surface, written in a language that predated most known civilizations. Kyung-soo recorded everything, his hands trembling with excitement despite their danger. These are warnings, he said, translating as he went. The first architects imprisoned something here, something they couldn't destroy. They called it the Void Mind. He moved deeper into the structure following the text. It feeds on energy and consciousness. It manipulated the Draconian fleet, used their power to weaken its prison. So it's intelligent? Haewon asked, checking every shadow for threats. Very. And it's been planning this for millions of years. Back on the Dauntless, Minji made her own discovery. She had been monitoring the energy patterns throughout the dimension when she noticed something disturbing. Captain, the entity is adapting. It's learning from us. Every scan we run, every weapon we test, it absorbs that information. Can it break free? Jae-hyun asked. Not yet. The Guardians are still containing it. But they're weakening. And when this dimension collapses, the prison walls will come down. The Void Mind will be released into our universe. Jae-hyun felt cold. What would happen if that thing got out? According to the readings I'm seeing, it would consume energy from stars, planets, entire civilizations. It would spread across the galaxy like a plague. Minji looked up from her console. The first architects imprisoned it here for a reason. If we let it escape, we doom everyone. So we can't just run away. No, sir. We have to make sure it stays trapped when we leave. Over the next day, working around the clock, the combined human-Draconian team developed a plan. Daeun and Sekthar would break the temporal loop, freeing the fleet. Then they would use the combined power of all 3,000 Draconian warships, plus the Dauntless, to create a massive energy discharge. The explosion would destabilize the pocket dimension enough to open an exit. But timing was everything. They needed to escape while simultaneously resealing the rift permanently, trapping the Void Mind inside as the dimension collapsed. There's a problem, Daeun admitted during a strategy session. The energy discharge needs to be precisely timed and controlled. Someone has to stay behind to manually trigger the final sequence. The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The energy levels required would kill any organic being instantly. Even shielded ships couldn't survive being at the epicenter. We could use an automated system, Sekthar suggested. No, Minji said quietly. The Void Mind will try to stop us. It can manipulate electronic systems. An AI would be corrupted. It needs to be a conscious mind, something with free will that can resist the entity's influence. Then we need a volunteer, Velgorth said bluntly. Someone willing to sacrifice themselves. Before anyone could speak, the ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. On the view screens, they watched in horror as the Void Mind finally revealed itself. It emerged from the depths of the pocket dimension like a nightmare made real. It had no solid form, just a vast presence that twisted reality around it. Where it moved, space itself corroded and died. The Guardians swarmed it, trying to push it back, but the entity was stronger now. It had fed on the Draconian fleet's energy for weeks. It batted the Guardians aside like insects. It's making its move, Haewon said. It knows we're planning to trap it again. The Void Mind reached out toward the fleet. Draconian warships buckled under its attention. Hulls crumpled. Shields failed. Crew members on the affected ships screamed as their minds were invaded by something ancient and hungry. We're out of time, Jae-hyun snapped. Daeun, break the loop now. Daeun and Sekthar executed their plan. A pulse of specially tuned energy swept across the Draconian fleet. The temporal loop shattered. Suddenly 3,000 ships were free and very confused. All Draconian vessels, this is Admiral Velgorth. The Admiral's voice boomed across the fleet channels. Battle stations. Formation Delta 7. We have a hostile entity and we are going to destroy it. The fleet responded like a single organism. Despite their confusion, despite being trapped for weeks, the Draconian warriors did what they had trained their entire lives to do. They fought. 3,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, missiles, particle weapons, everything they had. The firepower was enough to destroy planets. It hit the void mind and actually drove it back. But the entity adapted. It learned. The next volley did less damage, the third even less. It's not enough, Velgorth snarled in frustration. We can't kill it. We don't need to kill it, Jae-hyun reminded him. We just need to hold it off while we prepare the escape. Everyone to your positions. Da-yun, how long until the discharge is ready? 15 minutes. Make it 10. The battle raged around them. Draconian ships fought with incredible skill and courage, but they were fighting something that existed outside normal physics. The void mind lashed out, destroying ships with touches of corrupted reality. Hundreds of warriors died screaming. Minji watched the countdown. 10 minutes. 9. 8. She thought about Earth, about her family, about all the things she would never do. She thought about the AI lab where she had learned to make computers sing, and she thought about what needed to be done. Captain, she said calmly, I'll stay behind. Everyone turned to look at her. Jae-hyun shook his head immediately. No, we'll find another way. There is no other way. You need a conscious mind. I'm perfect for this. My neural interface allows me to connect directly with the ship's systems. I can resist the void mind's influence longer than anyone organic. She smiled sadly. I've already calculated the timing down to the millisecond. Only I can execute this correctly. Minji, please, Captain. Let me do this. Let me save them. She looked at the view screen, showing the dying Draconian ships. All of them. Jae-hyun wanted to refuse. He wanted to find another solution, but he had learned long ago that sometimes there were no good choices, only necessary ones. It's been an honor serving with you. Minji began transferring her consciousness into the ship's core systems. The honor was mine, Captain. Now go, I'll buy you as much time as I can. The Draconian fleet disappeared, and humanity was to blame. The Dauntless approached the coordinates where the dimensional rift had opened. Taeyun had spent 3 days modifying the ship's engines and shields based on Dr. Wu Jin's notes. She looked exhausted with dark circles under her eyes, but there was also excitement in her voice. The rift is definitely still there. I can detect the weak point in space. Can we force it open? Jae-hyun asked from the captain's chair. Yes, we'll need to generate a massive energy pulse. It'll drain our power reserves to almost nothing, but it should work. Da-eun hesitated. Captain, I should tell you something. According to Wu Jin's calculations, the pocket dimension is unstable. It might be collapsing. How long do we have? I can't be sure until we're inside. But it could be days or hours, Jae-hyun nodded. Then we better move fast. Minji, is the automatic transmission ready? Yes, sir. If we don't return in 72 hours, all our data gets sent to Earth Command. They'll know everything. Good. Everyone strap in. Hey, one, take the weapons station. If there's anything hostile on the other side, I want to be ready. The ship moved into position. Taeyun initiated the energy pulse sequence. The Dauntless began to vibrate as power built up in the engines. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. Then, with a sound that shouldn't have been possible in vacuum, reality tore open. The rift was beautiful and terrible. It looked like a wound in space, edges crackling with energy that shifted through colors that didn't have names. Looking at it made Jae-hyun's eyes hurt and his brain ache. Now or never, he said quietly. Take us in. The Dauntless plunged into the rift. Everything went wrong immediately. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed from every console. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red lighting. Gravity reversed itself, then disappeared entirely, then came back at 3 times normal strength. But worse than the physical sensations were the visions. Jae-hyun saw his childhood home burning. He saw Earth exploding. He saw himself as an old man, then as a child, then as something that wasn't human at all. Past, present and future, crashed together in his mind. He heard Kyung-soo crying out, saw Da-eun gripping her console with white knuckles, watched Minji's screens fill with impossible data. Haewon was screaming, though whether in fear or rage he couldn't tell. Then as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The ship stabilized. The visions faded. They were through. "Status report," Jae-hyun managed to say, his voice shaking. "Everyone's alive," Haewon reported. "Ship integrity at 70%. We took damage, but nothing critical." "Where are we?" Minji asked, staring at her sensors. "Captain, the readings don't make sense. Space itself is different here." Through the viewport, they could see why. They had entered a realm that defied understanding. Stars orbited each other in patterns that violated every law of physics. Planets existed in spaces that seemed to occupy multiple dimensions at once. Colors that shouldn't exist painted the void. In the distance, massive structures floated, their geometry hurting to look at. "This is incredible," Kyung-soo whispered. "And terrifying." Da-eun worked frantically at her station. "Time is flowing differently here. Our instruments can barely measure it. And look at this." She pointed to a gravitational map. "The entire pocket dimension is contracting." "I was right. It's collapsing. We have maybe 72 hours before everything in here gets crushed into a singularity. Then we need to find the fleet fast. Minji, can you detect them?" Minji adjusted her sensors to compensate for the strange physics. "I'm picking up something. Massive energy signatures about 5 million kilometers from here. It has to be them." As they approached, Haewon suddenly went rigid. "Captain, we're being watched. By what?" "I don't know. But there's something out there. Multiple somethings. They're not showing up on sensors, but I can feel them." She wasn't wrong. Everyone on the bridge felt it now. A presence. Or many presences. Something aware and not entirely happy about their intrusion. "Keep moving," Jae-hyun ordered. "Stay alert." They found the Draconian fleet an hour later. 3,000 massive warships hung in space, caught in what Da-eun identified as a temporal loop. The ships were moving but playing out the same few seconds over and over again. "They're trapped in time," Da-eun explained. "From their perspective, only moments have passed since they entered this dimension. They don't even know they're stuck. Can we break them out of the loop?" Jae-hyun asked. "Maybe. But we need to make contact first." Minji worked her communications magic. It took 30 minutes to find a frequency that would punch through the temporal distortion. Finally, the main view screen flickered to life. Admiral Velgorth appeared, his reptilian face twisted in confusion and anger. "Who are you? How did you get here?" The Admiral's image was distorted, flickering. "And where is here?" "Our navigation suddenly failed. We were in the Void Reach Nebula and then—" He stopped, seeing Jae-hyun's uniform. "Humans, I should have known. Is this some kind of trap?" "Admiral, listen to me carefully," Jae-hyun said. "You're not in the nebula anymore. You've been pulled into a pocket dimension. Your fleet has been missing for 3 weeks. Impossible. It's only been minutes. Time works differently here. Your fleet is caught in a temporal loop. We've come to get you out." Velgorth's eyes narrowed. "Why would humans risk themselves to save us?" "This is a trick." "It's not a trick. A human scientist created the rift that pulled you here. It was an accident, but it's still our responsibility. We're here to make it right." Before Velgorth could respond, the ship rocked violently. Haewon's screens lit up with warnings. "Captain, those presences I mentioned, they just got a lot closer, and they're not happy." Through the viewport, they could see shapes moving in the space around them, things that were almost solid, almost real, but not quite. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, existing in more dimensions than human eyes could process. "What are those?" Velgorth demanded. Kyung-soo studied them with wide eyes. "Guardians. Or defense mechanisms. The first architects, the ancient race that created this rift, must have left them behind. They're trying to keep something contained here." One of the entities brushed against the Dauntless. The ship's hull screamed. Metal warped and bent. Alarms blared. "They're attacking!" Haewon opened fire with the ship's weapons, but the energy beams passed right through the entities as if they weren't there. "Stop shooting," Da-eun called out. "You're making them angrier. They're not fully in our dimension. Physical weapons won't work." "Then what do we do?" Jae-hyun demanded. "We need to figure out what they're guarding, and fast, because I think we just woke it up." Deep within the pocket dimension, something ancient stirred. Something that had been imprisoned for eons. Something that had been waiting for an opportunity exactly like this. The Draconian fleet's powerful energy signatures had given it strength. And now, with more ships arriving, it had everything it needed to break free. Jae-hyun felt it in his bones, a presence far more terrible than the Guardians, a malevolent intelligence that pressed against his mind like a physical weight. On the view screen he could see Velgorth feeling it too. For the first time, the proud Draconian admiral looked afraid. "Captain," Minji said quietly, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the dimension. Whatever is in here with us, it's preparing to do something. Something big." Jae-hyun made a decision. "Admiral Velgorth, we need to work together. Right now, or we're all going to die here." The Draconian fleet disappeared, and humanity was to blame. The countdown reached 0. Taeyun triggered the energy discharge. Every ship in the Draconian fleet and the Dauntless fired their weapons simultaneously, but not at the Void Mind. They aimed at precise points in space that Daun and Sekthar had calculated. The combined energy tore reality itself. A portal opened, showing normal space on the other side. The beautiful ordinary stars of the Void Reach Nebula beckoned. "All ships through the portal now," Velgorth commanded. The Draconian fleet surged forward. Massive warships poured through the opening, escaping the pocket dimension. The Void Mind realized what was happening. It abandoned its attack on the Guardians and rushed toward the portal, trying to follow the fleet into the real universe. If it made it through, everything would be lost. Minji, now fully integrated with the Dauntless's systems, stood in its path. She couldn't stop the entity physically, but she could slow it down. She activated every weapon, every system, pushing the ship's reactor past safe limits. Energy crackled around the Dauntless like a miniature star. The Void Mind crashed into the ship. Minji felt its presence invading the systems, trying to corrupt her. It was like drowning in an ocean of malevolence. Ancient hunger pressed against her consciousness. She saw images of civilizations being consumed, heard the screams of countless beings that had been devoured across millions of years. But she held. She wasn't just human anymore. She was something new. Consciousness merged with machine, and she had one purpose: protect the others. "Not today," she whispered through the ship's systems. "You stay here." The last Draconian ship passed through the portal. Then the Dauntless, with Jae-hyun and his remaining crew, made it through. As they emerged into normal space, Jae-hyun turned to look back. Through the portal he could see Minji's ship, glowing like a small sun. The Void Mind wrapped around it, trying to force its way through. But Minji held the portal open just long enough to complete her final task. She triggered the permanent seal. The energy discharge that had been building in the pocket dimension's core released all at once. The entire dimension convulsed. The portal began to close. Her last transmission came through, broken by static. "It was an honor, Captain." Then the portal sealed shut with a flash of light so bright that ships throughout the nebula registered it. The pocket dimension collapsed into a singularity, taking the Void Mind and everything else with it, including Minji. The Dauntless drifted in space, its crew silent. Around them, 3,000 Draconian warships held their positions. Everyone was alive. Everyone except one. Jae-hyun stood on the bridge, staring at the spot where the portal had been. He felt numb. They had won, but the cost was almost too much to bear. "Captain," Haewon said gently, "Earth Command is hailing us. So is the Galactic Council. Everyone saw what happened." The Dauntless was transmitting the whole time. Jae-hyun had forgotten about that. Minji's automatic protocols had been broadcasting everything. The entire galaxy had watched the rescue. They had seen the truth about the rift, about Dr. Wu Jin's experiments, about the Void Mind. They had seen a small human crew risk everything to save their enemies, and they had seen Minji's sacrifice. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Taeyang stood before the assembled delegates. The chamber was packed. Every species in the galaxy wanted to hear what he had to say. Prime Minister Sumin appeared via hologram, her face grave. "Members of the Council," Taeyang began, "humanity takes full responsibility for the creation of the dimensional rift. A human scientist acting without government knowledge or approval conducted experiments that led to this disaster. We cannot undo what was done. We can only acknowledge our role and accept the consequences." Sumin stepped forward. "As of today, all classified human research projects will be disclosed to the Council. We will submit to oversight to ensure something like this never happens again. We will pay reparations to the Draconian Empire for their losses," the chamber murmured. This was unprecedented. No species had ever voluntarily submitted to such oversight. Then Admiral Velgorth stood. The massive Draconian moved to stand beside the human delegation. The Draconian Empire withdraws all accusations against humanity, he declared. His voice echoed through the chamber. Captain Jae-hyun and his crew risked their lives to save mine. They could have let us die. They could have hidden the evidence. Instead, they chose honor. Velgorth turned to face the council. For 3 million years, the Draconian Empire has stood alone. We trusted no one. We allied with no one. Today, that changes. I propose a formal military alliance between the Draconian Empire and humanity. The chamber erupted. Delegates from 100 species shouted in shock and disbelief. Draconians didn't make alliances. It was unheard of, but Velgorth wasn't finished. Furthermore, I request that a memorial be erected to honor the human who gave her life to save 2 million Draconian warriors. Minji of Earth, she could have escaped with her crew. She chose to stay. She chose to save us. The Draconian Empire will never forget this debt. 3 months later, Jae-hyun attended 2 memorial ceremonies. The first was on Earth in orbit around the planet. A beautiful monument was built, inscribed with Minji's name and the words, "She saved millions." The second ceremony was on the Draconian homeworld. Jae-hyun had never seen anything like it. Draconians filled the massive plaza. Hundreds of thousands of them. Warriors who would normally never show emotion stood with tears in their reptilian eyes. They had built an identical monument to Earth's. Velgorth met him at the memorial. The admiral looked different somehow, softer. "Your species is remarkable," he said quietly. "We have watched you for 200 years. We thought you were weak. We were wrong." "We just did what was right," Jae-hyun replied. "That is precisely what makes you strong. Power is easy. Honor is hard." Velgorth placed a clawed hand on Jae-hyun's shoulder. "The Draconian Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid. But we will try. You have allies now, Captain. True allies." Back on Earth, Diane threw herself into new research. She had been appointed to head a joint human-Draconian scientific initiative. Together, they would study the remains of the rift and search for other potential dangers. Kyung-soo worked with her, cataloging his findings about the first architects. "I found something interesting," Kyung-soo said one day, pulling up ancient star charts. "The first architects left warnings about other prison dimensions. The void mind wasn't the only thing they locked away." Daeun felt a chill. "How many others?" "At least 7 that I've found so far. Maybe more." Kyung-soo looked at her seriously. "The galaxy is more dangerous than anyone realized. There are things out there, ancient things that could destroy civilizations. The first architects tried to protect everyone. Now that responsibility falls to us. Then we better make sure we're ready." Haewon returned to her military career, but now she trained joint human-Draconian units. She found that Draconian warriors and human soldiers, despite their differences, shared something fundamental. They both understood sacrifice. They both understood duty. Jae-hyun visited the AI laboratory where Minji had been created. Dr. Bora, the lead researcher, greeted him warmly. She was a small woman with kind eyes and brilliant mind. "Captain, thank you for coming. I wanted to show you something." She led him to a secure lab. When the pocket dimension collapsed, there was a massive data burst. Most of it was just noise, radiation from the singularity. But buried in that noise, we found something. She pulled up a holographic display, fragments of Minji's consciousness. They're heavily corrupted and incomplete, but they're there. Jae-hyun's heart jumped. "Can you restore her?" "I don't know. It might take years. It might be impossible. But I wanted you to know that we're trying. She deserves that chance." "Thank you," Jae-hyun said, his voice thick. "Keep me informed." He left the lab and took a transport to the memorial. He stood before Minji's name, remembering her smile, her brilliance, her courage. Around him, Earth continued its day. People went to work. Children played. Life went on. The galaxy was different now. Humans served on Draconian warships, learning their tactics. Draconians studied at human universities, fascinated by human creativity. The alliance that no one thought possible was growing stronger every day. On the edge of the Void Reach Nebula, automated monitoring stations watched the spot where the rift had been. Most days they reported nothing, but occasionally sensors picked up strange signals. Patterns in the cosmic background radiation that almost seemed intentional. One duty officer, a young woman named Ha-yoon, noticed the pattern. She ran it through linguistic analysis programs, more out of curiosity than anything else. What she found made her pause. The patterns formed words. The same words repeating, still here, still fighting. Don't forget me. Hyun stared at the message for a long time. Then she forwarded it to Earth Command, marking it priority. Somewhere in the infinite complexity of collapsed dimensions and sealed rifts, a consciousness persisted. Damaged, alone, but not destroyed. Minji was still there, still holding the line. Jaehyun received the report late at night. He read it 3 times, hardly daring to believe. Then he contacted Dr. Bo-Ra. Work faster, he told her. She's waiting for us.